Okay,
Super.
there we go.
So
Yeah.
great, thanks, Chrissy. So as I said, the general consensus has been that, they are amazing, the people working, and really no complaints. Also, really good sportsmanship from the other captains and their teams. Our problem is the feedback we're getting from our teams is that, and our players is that this traveling every single year is going to be a problem because we have people who can't afford $600-700 weekends. They play on more than one team, and we're just wondering. We have some ideas for how to get it so that we could maybe do a rotation. Where we have to maybe go to Maine or New Hampshire, and we have some ideas for that. I know that it's cheaper. Those are cheaper facilities in Massachusetts. And ours are perhaps, a lot more like Chelsea Piers or Kings Highway, but we had some ideas that we wanted to float by you. And I'll let the other captains join in too. But I think that the general consensus is that we're getting a lot of pushback from our players saying that they don't know if they can do it anymore. And they're getting just exasperated from, and it is excluding some of our players that go up for just one day because they can't really swing 1 or 2 hotel night stays. So that's sort of our starting point.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, I will tell you, so I really am happy to hear the feedback because I do want to know what's going to work. When I first started, so this was my second round of championships.
Yeah.
And when I first started, I was so overwhelmed. I just said to everybody, give me 3 years in the exact locations because I don't know what I'm doing. And
Okay.
so I'll just be really open about that. That being
Yeah.
said, I have meetings in September with the championship subcommittee, and they make the end all be all recommendations. They take staff recommendations a lot. So I feel better now. I don't think I need 3 years. If we change things up, I think I'm okay.
Okay, good.
But that's
Yeah,
part of
I
the
mean-
reason why it was exactly the same from last year to this year.
Yeah, that's super. And I remember one time it was in Trumbull, and it really is. And that's why we kind of wanted to have this meeting early because, to be able maybe to get our opinions in before everything else is decided.
Mhm.
And I think that people were coming up with some do not have to travel. You're not going to be paying $600 in hotel, so they can pay more. That then maybe there's also a good consistency in air conditioning versus playing in non-air conditioning some years. So I hope the other captains can join in and come with their ideas because I don't have everything written down. Are you there, captains?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to say. Oh, this is Shari, but I don't have my camera on because I'm driving. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I live in New York, and I'm primarily, I just new to Connecticut for the last 3 years. I started playing on Amory's teams and now I'm captaining with her. So I have some ideas sort of like that would make it more similar to the way New York runs. Here, hold on. I'm actually stuck in traffic. I'll turn my video on. So basically in New York, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with the way that it's harder to get out of New York. It's harder to get to the sectionals or to the, maybe 18 and over maybe is more similar like Connecticut, but you have to go playoff first with 3 of the teams within New York, or 3 before you actually get to sectionals. And then when you're in sectionals, you're only against 5 teams. So then whoever wins that goes to nationals. So I think it's just a little harder to, and I almost wouldn't I think it almost makes it better because then you're doing your playoffs at the closer to when your season ends. And then only one team from, well, it's not only one team from New York, but it's I guess one team from, I guess it's called Southern, whatever part of New York it is that I can't remember. But So then when you're there, it's New Jersey, New York. There are a few teams from New York, like, you know, an area in northern New York, in southern New York, I'm just whatever. And so then there's 5 teams and then that team goes to national. So is it possible to make it so that it's not 2 weekends, so that it's just like, once you get there, you're playing 5 matches, let's say, for the weekend, and then you're done?
Almost like 18 and over, right?
Yeah. So just to kind of tack on to what Sherry's saying, we're still in sectionals. We're playing, I guess, on Sunday. My 3-0 team, I still captain a 3-0 team. So we had to do 2 nights of hotel for the first round of sectionals. And now we're going up again to Rhode Island to play 2 matches and we have to get another hotel room because we start early Sunday morning. It just would have been nice if we could have just gotten it all done that weekend, or just I don't know, something easier. So now we're, out 2 weekends and only playing actually 6 matches. I feel like those 6 matches could have easily been done. It would have been a long, brutal weekend, but if we have to play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just do 2 matches a day, just get it done. I don't know. My team is frustrated with this, and it's costing a lot. And it's like the first week of school back, and, a lot of the moms can't go because they've got kids now starting school and they're dropping kids off at college. And it's just like, I don't even have a full roster, and I would have had one. And I have to think that the other teams are in that same situation, not just us in Southern Connecticut, but 2 weekends, like we could have done it, in 1 weekend. So yes, I'm frustrated. It's probably coming through, but I agree with Sherry.
So I will tell you, one of the things that we've done in the 40s, like I said, was a little bit, the 40s, we actually started in 4 clubs at 9:45 in the morning on Friday and ended at 8 o'clock on Sunday night. And staff worked all 3 days. And that's why, so I have asked National to do a data project for me where they pinpoint where all the players are, where all the clubs are for adult 18 and over and adult 40 and over, and see about either redistricting or maybe a little bit like what Anne Marie and Sherry were saying about playing down so that not as many teams actually go to the section championship. That might take a little rearranging of schedules, which I'm happy to do. It just might take a little time to because like for Southern Connecticut, especially in Eastern Mass, they play all the way up to the 14-day mark before the championships. And so if we're going to add like mini championships in there, like local area, we just have to kind of back the schedule up. And I think that's something that we need to really look at and talk about and make sure that we can do it, because I actually also would very much like championships to be smaller. I mean, I think they need to be smaller, and I think they need to be more special. That wasn't really the thought process in the past. I think the staff in the past, certain staff members in this past, just really loved huge championships, which is great. It's just not my cup of tea. So I acknowledge, Aaron, that the 40s was not the best experience for anybody. I hear you. And so, go ahead, Rachel.
To speak to the travel, I know that we've heard in the past that the clubs in Rhode Island and Massachusetts are less expensive. There is such a large group of us coming from Fairfield County. And I think as opposed to spending $600 for hotels, we'd be happy to pay higher dues for our matches and, spread it out a little more evenly. We had, and I think Aaron also, we had 18 and over and 40 and over players that play on both teams are 18 and over. We just happened to be the bracket that lost 2 teams. And, had hotel rooms to play 2 so I get that we got one of the worst draws possible. Our particular 18 and over, and there's no control of that. I understand at the last minute. But, just taking a step back to what you guys were talking about 2 seconds ago, I think everyone in Fairfield County would be happy to pay a little more and not spend hundreds of dollars on hotel rooms.
I have one player who played 40 and 18 over mixed doubles. She also played 18 overs, went to district and sectionals, and then she also is going 55 and 40. She will have gone to 6 sectionals. I mean, God bless her. She's a great player, but that's a lot of money, $600 a pop.
And I think a lot of us are in that same boat, that we have a high percentage of players across all 18 over, 40 and over, 55 and over. So like a little bit of consideration geographically, I think would help all of us down here.
I mean, it
And
makes
just to
sense that
rotate it.
we've
Yeah.
got 2 Fairfield County teams going back to nationals this weekend.
Yep.
And it's great. I'm so happy and so proud of, Christine and Rachel's teams, as I am my own, but why are we traveling when
This is the
50%
third week
competing?
out of 4 that we're, headed north to hotel
We're
rooms.
really representing a large base, yet not getting represented at our home court advantage, which everybody else would be a lot closer. So
Yeah. So again,
Especially-
like if it comes down to money, I think we'd all be happy to spend a little more rather,
Yeah.
and save the
Yeah.
travel.
And it
Especially
would
if it was
spread the
explained that way.
load a little bit, right?
Mhm.
It would spread the load because, like I said, I had injuries and I had to have somebody drive up for the day, play a match, and then drive back down. And at least that way you would spread it a little bit. And I don't think that the other teams from Massachusetts or Rhode Island, New Hampshire would be adverse to that. I mean, there's a lot of fun in traveling with your team, right?
if I can just say that when I was at 4 districts, I don't even remember what weekend because I'm gone every weekend. with you. Like I hate to brag, I'm on every team that I'm on, like went to something. So I don't even remember from July now. But I was standing waiting in between a match or something, and some women from, I believe, somewhere in Massachusetts were just talking amongst themselves, like, "Oh man, it's too bad we don't go to Southern Connecticut or Fairfield, or not." They didn't say Fairfield County, but like, why don't we ever go to Connecticut? And the other woman says, "I guess they don't have enough facilities." And I said, I'm gonna interject here. So we have enough facilities, and they're air conditioned, and you should have seen their minds were literally like blown. They were like, "You have AC?" So yeah, it's not people. They're like, "We would totally go there." I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
I wish I could show up for the Zoom calls.
Christy, on the issue, I wanted to follow up on a couple of the issues that folks have raised here. First of all, when we're talking travel for us, the person that Anne Marie referred to who had to drive up for a day and return, we're talking travel each way of 3 to 4 hours.
Mhm.
So that was like, 3 hours up, jump on the court, play your match, and turn around in traffic on a Sunday on I-95 in the summer. And that's what we're faced with. You tell your players, well, you can get to, Woburn or wherever, hypothetically in X amount of time, and invariably it's 50% more. And as a captain, you're sitting there sweating bullets because, you need to see the whites of their eyes before you write their name on the roster, and you don't want, or on the lineup sheet. And it's stressful and it's hard on everybody involved. And the other thing is that I know that the cost factor plays in not only with regard to travel and lodging, but also with regard to the facilities that you all pick in terms of running these events. I have a couple of players who are not college tennis players, but they were college volleyball players who are in extremely good shape on the younger end of the age spectrum on my team. And we were in Farmington Valley for districts. And I had players who, because of the heat and lack of ventilation, were coming off the court in very bad shape. And they are extremely good athletes. And I think that when you're putting us in facilities that are not meant to be used in the summertime, and we're having to play in those conditions, it's not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous.
Dangerous.
And I think everybody would be happy to pay more money to go to a facility that has appropriate conditions for playing in the summertime. We were at Long Meadow for sectionals last weekend, I mean, I know you can't control outside environment, but it was far better to be outside in the fresh air than it was to be in an unventilated facility. So if I could put a plug in for, we will gladly pay more money to go to a facility that is meant to be used in the summertime. I think it would help tremendously.
I'll also add, when you mentioned Farmington, when one of our teams was in Farmington, I think it was Christine, if you're there, you could, and Erin, you would know too. Was it it was 18 and over. We were in Enfield, right? And then Farmington. I might be mixing my weekends up. There's been so much.
We
But,
were
you
on
know,
the
we
reverse, the
played-
3-5s were on the reverse of that.
Yes,
So you
this
might
is
have
the
been right.
3-0, but we went to Farmington and we played teams that had played the previous days in air conditioning in, optimal conditions. And we had played, we were dying. We were worried about our lineup all weekend. If anybody gets dehydrated, if anybody gets hurt. And then ultimately, when we got to the championship, we were facing teams that had less travel, air conditioning all weekend. So the health of our players isn't fair across the board, I would
It's
think, given.
Absolutely not. And my team was, I mean, it's not coincidence that the two teams that lost were the ones that played in the heat all weekend. I'm sorry, it's not coincidence.
Right.
And it's coincidence that the two teams that played in AC breezed through and kicked butts of teams that had beaten them all year. I had my youngest and fittest player was vomiting after her match, and her opponent, who, no disrespect, was not as in good shape, was absolutely fine. Walked off the court with a win and was like, oh, I can't believe it's so hot in here. My player's going, what are you talking about? Is this your first match? No, she's played all weekend. She couldn't
No
believe
travel and AC. So
I mean,
it wasn't
it's
fair come the Sunday of that weekend.
not even close to being equitable. It's like having a person play 2 weeks in the Australian Open and then pairing them with someone that's played at Indian Wells in 75 degrees and breeze all,
Right.
you just don't do that. It's not fair. Yes. So can't say.
I'm not saying I know, Christy, this job, it's hard. Like there's so many pieces to it and it's not easy but I just think like all these things we're bringing up, if they can be looked at and addressed in the planning of future championships to make it equitable across the board from a competitive standpoint, we'd all feel better about that.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think shrinking the championships themselves is, because if we do that, if we're able to play down quite a bit in Southern Connecticut, where you guys typically are anyway, and then the championships are, we ended up, so the adult 18 and over districts this year had 183 teams and 18 clubs. So I was, that's 18, site directors and 18 assistant site directors and 18 sets of volunteers and, clubs that unfortunately the heat is an issue in most of them. And we just don't have that many air conditioned clubs. And I know historically the reason they go to Eastern Mass is because we've got 3 clubs within a 30-mile radius that are 14, 10 and 10 courts. But when all was said and done, using more clubs in the Connecticut area, I know it wasn't Southern Connecticut, was not quite as difficult as I thought it was going to be honest with you. The staff was great. And some of them I still to this day have not met. And I talked to them on the phone and they're good. They're like, we're going to run it. We're fine. And they were. But I do think shrinking the championships and also, and I want to start talking to the clubs in the other parts of Connecticut, because those are the clubs that historically have been used in the past. So it was easy for me to go back to them and say, please, I need help. But now that I've got a little bit of understanding of how it works, to go to Chelsea Piers and to go to some of those other clubs and say, this is what we pay typically, this is how we charge, this is what we can guarantee you as income. How can we work this out so that you don't feel like you're getting screwed on a whole weekend of programming that you might have and have to cancel for us, but also so that we can dedicate some to the league players instead.
And
Christy, I hope that if you go that route, and that if you find that they're quoting you numbers that historically have not been something that the USTA would consider, I hope you would come back to this group, the captains, or at least send out a survey and say, would you be willing to pay this much more for a more localized event? Because I think that the USTA might be surprised at the answer, and a
Yeah.
more localized event would allow us to, if the whole point is to get greater participation in these events, a more localized event will allow us to draw on players who maybe couldn't make a full weekend commitment, but could come for a single match or more. You have no idea how aggravating it is to, look at these Boston teams and see that they're pulling in their entire roster when the rest of us are sucking wind, trying to get singles players who've never played singles before to get out on the court. It's that kind of thing.
yeah, and
But
just
I
to-
think it goes with you too, what Christy said. It would also make the championships that much more special.
Erin, you're on mute. Hold on, you're on mute.
Am I on mute?
No,
I-
Erin was. There she is.
Oh, but I
Sorry,
think
but-
Christy, what you said is so true, that it would make it more special if championships were more a sort of a smaller group, more elite.
yeah, but when it comes to like Chelsea Piers and the other clubs, they have nothing going on. Like I've been there every day and it's like every court is empty. I'm sure they would take whatever revenue they could get is still better than what they're getting now with 7
Mhm.
empty courts. They've been just giving us courts to practice on for free because we've got this
Wow.
match. So, I'm not in their pocket. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
I mean, this is kind of has been my conversation with some of the clubs that have said no, is that I'm guaranteeing you that I'm going to pay you this much.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
whether or not, if everybody defaults and nobody shows up, I'm still going to pay you this much because you're emptying those courts for me, and I still have been getting some pushback. So maybe I just know I need to do a better job of building the relationships with those club owners and managers, whoever is in charge of that piece of it, and see what we can really work through and work out.
And you've got captains who have good relationships with these clubs anyway. And we're happy to speak up and say, guys,
Yeah.
we really like, you got to bring us here. We'll go for drinks at the bar. We'll do, because Chelsea restaurant bars, like,
Yeah.
Christy, just get us in the door.
Yeah. Hey, maybe.
Uh,
some-
Why don't
you-
you jump there?
oh,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead, Susanna. Go,
No,
Susanna.
I just wanted to jump in and having been a player in Southern Connecticut, captain in Southern Connecticut, as well as, in my current role, what I think, I echo what everybody said in that, they'd be willing to pay more just really on a team fee side to play locally. But I think one thing we have to keep in mind is if we're doing that, then we really have to keep these districts very local, probably just Southern Connecticut. I mean, I just know that, in Rhode Island, I mean, here we pay whatever, $35 a match during the regular season. In Rhode Island, that
Yeah.
fee is like $15. Somebody from Rhode Island or even Northern Connecticut, they would be just appalled to pay anything we pay. So in a way, I think in order for this to work and keep it local, we have to just have the local teams compete. It's just, I mean, I look at the statistics, the average age, average income, like Fairfield County and Southern Connecticut is like double what another local area in New England is. And just people just would not be interested in paying as much as we'd be
No.
willing to pay. So we kind of have to keep it local in a way, just have our teams compete against each other, almost like Southern Connecticut districts, if you will.
Right. Yeah, that's what Sherry was saying. Keep it like districts. But also, I like the idea. One of the captains up there in the 40 and over weekend came up with have a home court advantage fee where people who aren't paying hotels maybe pay a surcharge. And then,
Agreed.
right? I mean, I think that we'd all be willing to do that.
But how do you prove that or figure that out?
I don't know. I haven't thought that far, but I just mean
It sounds
That's
good,
an
but
we're just
idea.
we're brainstorming. But I think
Yeah.
that's what Sherry said. Make it harder to get out of Connecticut, and then once you're there, like Christy said, then you just play against New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Cape Cod. Well, Cape Cod is Massachusetts, but you know what I mean. Then it really is something that's really exciting, and it's a big event. And then the gifts could also be a little bit more
not that I don't love the towel, I do love the towel, but like, you know, it's a bigger accomplishment and it would feel more special.
Right, like one team representing Connecticut.
Yeah,
Instead
right.
of 4 or 5, you know, like they're, I
And
guess that's what
6,000
happens,
from New
right?
Hampshire.
In
yeah.
18, like, I'm curious why it's so different, the way that the 18s are than the 40s. Is it because of when the other teams finish?
That just changed a few years ago, the 40 and over to the straight to set. Up until a few years ago, didn't we also have districts and sectionals for 40 and over?
No, so 40 and over was always sectionals. It was often a 2-weekend event. So in the past, so
Right.
40 and over is not as big as 18 and over, but it's too big to finish in one weekend. And just so you know, the reason 18 and over can be so out of control is because certainly in Southern Connecticut, we run 2 seasons. We run fall, winter, and spring, summer. So you have teams qualifying from 2 seasons. You effectively have a double inventory
Oh.
of teams. So that's
Oh,
the bit on our end.
Yeah, and to
That's-
Susanna's point about that, when we are one of the only sections where the winner of a 4-team flight goes and the first and second place go from 5 or more. Most of the other sections, it's 10 teams or more send 2, or they only send 1 no matter what. So we're kind of looking into some of that as well, which would also play into more local play down or districts or whatever you want to call it. But then I also, you know, Sherry, you said that New York sends 5. We typically, for the adult 18 and over, try to get 4 because the 4-team flight seems ideal. I always complain about trying to schedule 5-team flights because it's hard on a scheduling standpoint. But like, what if there's a smaller Southern Connecticut-ish area that is its own district? And then we have 5 instead of 4 districts. Maybe that's something that we look into. Hopefully the data that I get from national will really answer some of these questions and see what works best. I do kind of like the idea of the home court advantage fee. I will tell you, the Eastern Mass, with the clubs are so gracious to us and they're so nice. The Eastern Mass players are fantastic, but I don't think they realize how good they have it.
Mhm.
To the point about the championship that's in Rhode Island, there's one Eastern Mass team that's going to have to drive to Providence, which is maybe an hour-ish. I have a hate mail folder on my email. I have more hate mail from them for having to drive because it's supposed to be in Eastern Mass. It's on the calendar in Eastern Mass.
Oh my.
They are so mad at me for bringing it to Providence. And I'm like, it's still more for the Southern Connecticut folks to drive to Providence.
Mhm.
So they don't realize what you guys go through to,
Well, Time for
Attack-
them to realize.
yeah.
And that also, Susanna, you mentioned, you know, the Rhode Island teams gawking at the higher fees, and I totally understand that the demographics, whatever, are different all over our state. But I don't think they realize what we all pay from down here. So while if the fees went up a little bit, no one's ever happy with anything going up, but it just evens the playing field. It's either that or, redistricting a little
Well,
bit.
and it
but-
also gives players, I have a few players that, to be honest, they cannot afford it. So I have 2 players right now who will never participate in anything in postseason because they cannot afford the gas, the time off work, the hotel, and anything else. And
Right.
our team is at the point now where we're trying to actually just kind of pool our money together for her if we end up going to nationals, which maybe we will. We'll find out. Because we don't want her to just, not have that experience. So it would be nice if, she could at least participate in one postseason match. She's never done that. In the 3 years that she's been on my team, she's never done that. And I find that to be really, sad. So Massachusetts can complain, but at least they're getting home court advantage and they don't have to pay anything. Because it's definitely there.
What happens September? When does the regular season start? The fall season? Or
September.
September when?
First is the beginning of the championship year. Each local area plays adult 18 and over at a different time.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering, like, we talk about the heat and the clubs and the availability, like, is playing in September for 18 and over. I mean, 18 and over, or whenever, because they have a spring season too. Is that even an option, playing in September versus August?
The championships? It's not, because I have to have my championship rosters in by the second week in September to national.
Right.
And that's based on their calendar. And it's why we can push the 55s and the 65s out, because I don't have to have them in until October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
And I wonder, that's a good thought though, I don't know, would it be hard to get players to play on weekends in September because of families and?
I think August is much harder. Families, again, like kids, they're dropping kids off. I took 2 kids to college in between the 2 weekends of championships. It was hell, the travel, the college, all of it. There's, family vacations at the end of August. There's kids to college all throughout the month of August, depending on where, kids are going. It's a really challenging 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You could switch the 55 and over with them, because the
They're
55 and
not
over
taking
most
kids to
likely are
college,
not
most likely. Right.
driving people to school, right?
That's very true.
I was gonna mention, I think 40 and over may be okay for September, but I know 18 and over, once back to school starts, their weekends are booked with,
Yeah.
sports and kid activities. You're not gonna get anybody come back to school.
I mean, there's no perfect time, but that summer travel, college drop is really challenging. We had we had 60% of our team away.
But if we could play a lot of it down.
Yep,
In
that
the
would make a
local
huge
area.
difference.
Would be a huge difference. Yeah.
And I know I mentioned this several times, Christy. I feel so strongly about this. If we could just do local playoffs the week after the season ends at the end of July, let's say whatever, July 23rd, and then the week after that we do local playoffs, and Southern Connecticut sends the finalist and the winner of every PRP to sectionals or whatever you want to call it, then at least the rest of us, like 99% of our teams, don't have to worry about going past districts, right? So they can move on with their vacations and just send the top 2 teams.
The other thing is that I did the New York playoffs that Sherry had mentioned. And the nice part about it was that they were run at night. We played one match on Tuesday and the semifinals on Tuesday and the finals on Thursday. And it was very doable. You had a great roster of people to deal with. You had your team there to cheer people on. It was great. And it ran really smoothly. And I think we did it the week after the season ended.
Were they outdoors?
Beg pardon?
Were they outdoors?
No, we were at Westchester Tennis Center, the old Sound Shore. But it was back to back, bing, bang, boom. So we weren't dealing with a weekend, for example. And we were getting it done, fairly expeditiously. I know that the next level, and I forget what it's called, maybe Sherry will remember, but the next level, so we were local at Westchester Tennis Center for Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturday, single match was in Hopewell Junction. And then from there, they went to sectionals up in Schenectady, which was the 5 different regions that Sherry referred to. Southern, Western, I forget what it is, Metro, but it's like New York City. You can look, I can send you you can look online for to see what it looked like from a graphic standpoint. But it worked really well, and it was a very manageable amount of travel. We got increasingly farther away, obviously, from where we were located. But I think it maximized the number of players involved and the experience for everyone.
I know that junior team tennis sectionals has always been on a Tuesday and Wednesday. It never occurred to me that to do some of the play during the week. Susanna, do you know the history of why they're always on the weekends?
I don't know the history, but presumably, you're just really trying not to discriminate against people who have normal work hours and family obligations. And so if you do it on a weekend and you know when that is, you can certainly make arrangements. Whereas the weekday is just tougher. I just know, like, from my end, if I have certain leagues, like I have the tri-level that has playoffs before I send one team to championships. And it's always been a weekend just because I have very discrete, populations where one has children in school and one is like, you know, traditional career hours, working hours, and weekend is the only thing that'll work for everyone.
Okay.
I mean, I think localizing the championships would, at the end of the day, it sounds like would solve a lot of these problems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always felt badly that our team, Southern Connecticut teams will travel such a distance to play a team that's like 10 miles away from them.
Yeah.
I know, and I made a couple of mistakes on the schedule this year that happened, and that was 100% my fault. And so I'm going to try to avoid those things in the future. Oh, yeah, that's, I know, frustrating for everybody. So,
You don't know the 3-letter abbreviation for every club in New England, Christy, off the top of your head, and where they are geographically, where you
where
don't
they are
live?
geographically, I've got my little map on. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I want you to, I tell you what, I want you guys to know, I do take feedback. So last year, if there was an option between, if I had a 4-team flight, there was an option between a 3-team and a 5-team, I opted for the 3-team because that seemed, first of all, was easier to schedule. Let's be honest. Got a lot of feedback that said that that players wanted more matches. So this year when I had the option, I pulled it into a 5-team flight. In some cases, I think that was good. And in some places, I think that it wasn't the best. But players kept telling me they want more matches as opposed to few matches.
Yeah.
So we'll keep tweaking it and keep trying. But I do think I'm going to have, I can't wait to get the data from National. Right before this, I actually talked to the guy that does the data. He's like a big data nerd at National. And he was really, I had sent him an email. He's like, I need to know exactly what you want. And so he talked to me for 30 minutes about exactly what I'm looking for. And I think it'll be really helpful. So he's going to get it back to me. He's at the US Open working a little bit, but he said probably around sometime the first week of September. And then we can sit down and I'll take it and look at it and kind of maybe make a couple of plans and talk to Susanna and some of the other local league coordinators. I know Viola and Eastern Mass, it's not the travel issue, but the volume issue is very similar, and the timing of the leagues and how little time you guys have to squeeze in the league. Susanna and Viola are the closest in numbers like that. So we'll kind of touch base with them and see what we can do to make it better for next year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. We are going to, I am not going to use, for those of you who happen to be at Longmeadow this past weekend, I will not use Longmeadow again. Just so you know.
Really?
2 years in a row. They've promised me they would clean the porta potties, and 2 years in a row they did not.
Oh,
It was not good.
oh.
Yeah, not good.
My players all went over to Big Y, so.
They did. Yeah, they did.
I
One of
will
the
say-
cashiers at Big Y goes, "Why are all these people coming over?"
The
Funny.
ladies that ran the weekend at forecourt for 18 and over,
Mhm.
was that, yeah, they were great. I will say the
Good.
2 women, I guess they're from Maine, I think they said, and they were amazing. Our only snafu was that the owner's dog ran on, 2 dogs ran on a
Oh.
court in the middle of a match, which
But that's
caused a little, I heard it from the other side of the building. But I thought it was happening outside. And then when we all came in, everyone was talking because the players on the court started fighting. You know, because there were literally, I was like, what do you mean there were dogs on a tennis court?
Yeah. But between that and then I had one, so when I book out the clubs, even like the 6-court facilities, I book out all 6 courts, even though we're only using 5, so that we have carryover. And if we get behind, we can use that extra court. And one of the clubs decided to put pickleball on until noon. I'm like, okay,
All
I need to
right.
be a little more clear in my conversations, apparently. So, yeah. Well, good. I wrote down a ton of notes. I've got 2 pages. Is there anything else? I don't want to keep you guys too long. I don't want to, it's a lovely Friday afternoon.
I just have a
Thank
quick,
you.
Yeah.
just quick, you know, like the whole player gift thing. And I think it was 2 weekends ago. Again, I don't remember which one, but my acting captain checked in for me because I was still like at a different venue or something with a different team or whatever. And she's like, oh, your gifts will be shipped. So I remembered for districts or sectionals recently, we got a gigantic refrigerator box full of blankets from like the previous districts.
That would have been from last year. Yeah.
So they were
Yeah.
they were really late, and like literally half my team is around the country. So I'm not going to be mailing them those gifts. But is that something that we need to expect, that they'll be late, or do we think that, because it would be really great if we had them at that weekend so I can just get rid of them and not have to store them in my house.
Yes, so that is the idea. So last year with the blankets, there was a shipping issue with COVID, and then our office closed, and they were in the office and we weren't able to go. So I had them, and when we hired an administrative assistant, as the first thing I had him do was ship all those blankets, because I know it kind of sucked. It was really late, but we had a different type of staff food. The idea, yes, is to get, when you get your lineup cards, you also get your player gifts.
Okay, yeah.
Did you not get towels?
We got towels. We've gotten towels, except the last weekend we were only allowed to get 8 towels, and so I only have, I mean, which is fine. Like my ladies are like, I don't want another towel. And I've got 150 USTA towels in my house. If anyone wants them, I'm just going to donate them to a humane shelter or something. But, so they were only giving us 8, even though I had like 10 players. I don't know, which is fine. If it was like a better gift, then maybe they'd be upset about it, because it's like,
Erin,
I
there's a place in Norwalk called Grassroots. It's a nonprofit tennis center. So if
Okay.
you're seriously going to donate those towels, I'm happy to coordinate with you and get them and drop them off there.
Oh, it'd be great. I literally have 2-3 bags worth
Yeah,
of tennis.
no, I'm sure they'd be thrilled to get them. They serve underprivileged kids in the community and teach them tennis.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I've got
That's a great idea.
They're one of our NJTLs actually too, Erin. If you want to, the blankets that you have that are extra, if you want to take those too, whatever you'd like to do with them, I'm sure the kids would love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. I just kind of have been handing them out to people that I haven't seen in over a year, because it was like, nationals was the last time I saw them.
Yeah.
If you want to throw them in your car this weekend, I'll take them from you.
Okay, I will definitely. Yeah, I just wanted to know if that's something I should expect, to not be able to get them like during the weekend or what.
No, we should be able to get them during the weekend. Mhm.
Okay. Makes life as a captain just a little bit easier.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Christy.
Yeah, no problem. I will keep you guys posted as we get the data and have more conversations. And like you said, Beth, if something happens and I can't, work with the clubs, and, we'll send out an email, we'll talk to people and see how we can make it a little bit better next year.
Super.
Mhm.
Thank you so
Super.
much.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everybody. Have a great
you.
weekend.
Bye. You
Thanks.
too.